Hello and welcome to the Bookish Rambles podcast with me, Holly.
And me, Becky.
And today's episode, it's a book episode, but we're talking about two books. So we read The Island of Dr Moreau, which it is definitely H.G. Wells. I always get him confused with Lovecraft. Which is a shame because one of them is famously very racist. I don't know about H.G. Wells. He probably was, considering.
I was reading about him, and I think he was what's called a futurist. So he was believed in nuclear power. So I don't know if that just kind of gives you the gist of what he was like as a person.
Good for him, though. I mean, he was very clear. I will say, we'll get to this in a minute, but one of the things that I do appreciate about him as a writer is that he did seem very ahead of his time.
Oh yeah, completely buy the idea of Dr. Moreau, because I've been doing some background reading into the time period that it came out, so I'd like to talk about that when we get into it, actually.
I'm just going to look him up to make sure that I know when he was born, just because I have an idea, but I just want to... Okay. So we read The Island of Dr. Moreau, which is his book, and then we read we talked about Mexican Gothic on the podcast before. We read The Daughter of Doctor Moreau, which is by that same author. It's by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And it's, would you say a reimagining? I never know what to call it. I'm so bad with words.
Retelling.
Yeah. It's kind of, there's no daughter in the original story, but she is a Mexican author, and so she sets the island in Mexico, and she turns it into a sort of, I don't know, a slightly more from the perspective of, okay, this is spoiler heavy, so I'm just going to say it. The daughter is one of the hybrids. If you've never read the story, basically the doctor, he does these experiments, and in the original story, we don't really know why. We just know that he's been cast out by society because his experiments are very controversial. They're based off of Darwinian stuff. And the idea that you could take the DNA of animals and make them into humans by sort of molding their genetic makeup, I think. I don't know how to explain it because I'm not a scientist and this is fictional science.
If I remember, it is based on, I'm going to have to look it up because...
It's called genules, right?
No, it's something like that. It's based on, I'm gonna have to look it up. I was looking when I was reading the background, a vivisection.
Yes.
So this was the idea that you could take, like you're saying, take animal traits. And even back then, because it was still a thing that was practiced, people it was very controversial even back then. So
yeah. And so...
just thought that was interesting.
The daughter is a hybrid. I knew that, from the beginning. I feel like that was...
Oh, yeah, it was obvious. Yeah. I could tell. I was like, yeah, this is definitely where this is going.
The page that I took a picture of, page 84 because I was like, oh, that is... it's definite. There's not even... I think that was when I was other than it just being a theory I had, I was like, yeah, okay. There's no doubt about it. And I don't think that was the point. I think it's supposed to be obvious. I think that it's more that you're supposed to view her experiencing what she thinks is a human life. Because the original novel, I listened to the audiobook, and I've listened to H.G. Wells' The Time Machine as an audiobook as well. And I think honestly, I don't know if I would prefer to read them, with my eyes or not, because I think my problem with H.G. Wells is that his stories so far, of which I admittedly have only read 2, they have that very classic style from the era that he was alive, where there's a narrator who has experienced something and they're talking about it from the past, sort of, looking back at what happened, but they do it in a way that's really dry. They lived through this experience, and the experiences that they've lived through are very interesting. The concepts that, as I said, his brain for the time period. When I think about him having to, research to make these things, I have a book idea that is, so intimidating to me. And it's, in terms of, the closest of his works that I've read, it would be The Time Machine. And I genuinely cannot imagine what it would be like to be writing a book like that in a time period before the internet and before, you know, loads of texts had been sort of translated and stuff. Like, we're talking about a man who had this brilliant idea, and then he wrote the novel, and it just was so dull. Like, the idea is so good, but the execution is just so boring to me. And I think that the reason why I liked the adaptation is because it goes into something that the main character from the original text couldn't really understand, which is the concept of the hybrids being sentient beings. You know, like in the original novel, these hybrids, they turn against the Doctor and they kill like everything in sight, right? Like they lose their minds because they're animals, and he sees them as these vicious animalistic creatures, and he has pity for them because he knows that they've been through pain at the hand of the Doctor and that they're like these mutations that should never have existed. But also he doesn't really get that, whereas we read this book from the perspective partially of one of the original characters, who I thought it was an interesting interpretation of why he would choose to stay there and why he would be there. And then, you know, you have the other side of it, which is like this woman who, she believed that she was human and she's not. And she's been raised with these people, these hybrids. And so she doesn't see them as vicious, even when they act viciously. You know, she doesn't see it as like a thing that is of a concerning nature. And she's got this loyalty to her father as well, and it's like really weird that you have this sort of staging of it. And I think that it was more interesting to me than the original, because you can kind of, more than feeling about it like, oh, this is something that should never have happened, like the whole, you know, playing God idea being like the main thing in the original story. I think that's still present here, but it's present with also the mindset of like, well, he played God and now these creatures exist. And I think it's the thing of like, the example I always think about is Detroit Become Human, which I'm assuming you know about that game.
Yes.
Yeah. People always talk about AI as if it could be sentient. It's not. But if there were to be androids that were sentient, like in that game, yeah, obviously we're gonna have to learn to sort of live with them, because when you gain sentience as a creature, when you've been raised with manners and beliefs, and you can talk, you know, you can express those things, it becomes more complicated. And I just thought that it was really interesting to see this original text that was really interesting be explored in a way that touched more on that side of it. I don't know. I had a lot of feelings about it, but that was like my main takeaway, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think I preferred the retelling to like the Island of Dr Moreau. Like, not a lot of it. Gosh, let me start again. Not a lot was going on, but obviously because I've completely finished the book today, so it's like really fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
There was a lot to do with about how, you know, she's confined as a woman.
It had
like
that Silvia Moreno Garcia touch.
Yeah, I was just like, yeah, this is implying that the fact that it kept talking about a jaguar, I was like, she's a jaguar hybrid, isn't she? She's a jaguar hybrid, isn't she?
Well, she needed the same injections as the hybrids. Like, I was like, there is no way.
Like,
I get what you mean. Do you know what I thought as well? I was like, when I was listening to the audiobook, I was like, they are constantly like, something is happening. Because like the first few chapters, he's like, I was lost at sea and you were wrong. There weren't 4 people, there were only 3 of us. And I was like, okay, so why is this relevant? And he's like the only survivor, and he gets taken in by this guy who's like a drunk, and he seems a bit dodgy, but he's also saved this guy's life. And there are a bunch of animals, and he's like, oh, these people seem really wary of me. And then they like throw him back into the ocean. And then they decide that actually maybe that was a bad thing to do, and they come back for him. And then he's on this island, and there are these like creatures, and he's like, huh. And then he's like being chased by these creatures, and then he sees a creature like being murderous, and then he sees like the Doctor's like stuff, and then it was just like one thing after another, but also it wasn't like the setup felt a bit rushed almost, whereas the slowness of the sort of rewriting of it, I liked the additional character. I liked that it brought in the idea of a woman's rights of her worth. I love that was interplayed with the idea of her not actually being fully human. I love the idea of the mentions of like the Mexicans and the native peoples and the way in which colonialism played into this, because it is super important. There's a thing in Jurassic Park where island, I don't know if you knew this, but the island that Jurassic Park is on is in Costa Rica. And the reason, sorry, I say Costa Rica, but like people in America say Costa Rica. So I assume that's
it
technically...
depends on your accent. I think we say Costa Rica because that's just how our accents are. It's like how it's like how Americans say Antarctica. Is it Antarctica or something? We say Antarctica. Antarctica. They say Antarctica. We say Antarctica.
They cut out letters all the time. It's really...
and they say we cut out letters, and it's like, okay, everybody does that. And like like Japanese manga, they all say manga, and I'm like, we pronounce it manga.
When we cut out letters, there's actually like a word, because we take, like if I was to say butter, right? It's not like I've completely skipped over the letters. It's that there's a space where the letters were, almost as if there's been an apostrophe put there. Whereas they completely ignore the letters. They just move on with the word.
Isn't that interesting? I say butter. I actually pronounce my T's.
It depends on the day. If I was saying, butter. I'd be like a chip butty. Like, I wouldn't say the T's. But if I was in front of people, I would be like, oh, could I have the butter, please?
Yeah, do you know people from where I live, they go window, like window, and I'm like, what do you mean? Do you mean window? Do you mean window? Like window? Do you mean window?
I was thinking about that with, if I would say like my pillowcase, put the pillowcase on, like
pillowcase.
So I do that, but I do it with different words. It's really weird because I think
pillow.
I've spoken about
pillow,
this.
not pillow. Oh, pillow. I was like, I would say pillow, but that's just because I talk like an idiot.
But I think the problem is that like I code switch, but I do it as part of like an autism thing, like a constant mask. But I don't do it with some things, because I guess with like some things, and the thing is like I don't even want to. Like I have this aversion actually. I'm like, you know what? If you think that I sound too working class, get over it. Like, okay.
Like I mean, like when people say window, I just think it's just accent differences. Like I would never say that, but that's just not how I have always pronounced it. I'm just like, oh, okay, that's what you mean.
Yeah, it's fair. I think that I hate people who look down on people for having an accent. I just think it's rubbish. But basically Costa Rica. It's set there, and the reason why it's set there, and it's explained a lot more in detail in the book, which is why I prefer the book. We'll get into that eventually. But I literally loved that in the book it talked about how the reason why Costa Rica was where it was done was because the laws were very different there. And so they knew that what they were doing was a bit dodgy, and they knew that it was dangerous, but it was easier to sort of do it anyway. And so it was like the mentions in the book that aren't really in the film is the purposeful ignorance of the effect that these actions have on human life for the pursuit of like this scientific discovery, not necessarily because it's a good thing to happen, but because it's something that you can like make money off of and brag about. And it's like the direwolf thing, right, where they're trying to bring back these extinct species. If you're gonna bring back an extinct species, I can't say that word. I keep saying extinct.
Extinct. That's a new word.
But like they why are you bringing back these species that have been dead for thousands of millions of years? Bring back like the white rhino that only went extinct because of us. You know?
See, I'm not for genetic engineering and messing with animals.
No, I think it's
one
weird.
One of the best arguments I've seen for it is obviously they want to bring back mammoths.
Why?
And they want to combat global warming because of bringing back the mammoth steppe. So you know how the grasslands in the Ice Age used to help keep the carbon dioxide and like the oxygen levels. That is where they want to bring it back to combat global warming. That is one of the best arguments I've seen. I'm not.
Yeah.
I mean, for bringing animals back, but I can see where they're coming from. They want to do that, but then I'm like, if you bring back a mammoth, one, that is going to have a lot of consequences. people will hunt them again because
Yeah.
people will want mammoth. Like,
Look, I
there
got a
is
mammoth.
there's a lot of negatives.
It's that's why I think
Back.
it's like really dumb, right? Like, if you're gonna bring something back to life, bring something back that we have like actual real DNA of, because it died in our lifetimes as a direct result of our actions as a human race. Like-
They do have DNA of a mammoth. This is where it gets really interesting because DNA obviously breaks down after a while.
Yeah.
It's why, like Jurassic Park, for example, is not theoretically possible because the DNA doesn't exist anymore. But like, for example, mammoths, the DNA, like 10,000 years, they can use that, which is why they've created I am very well versed in this subject, if you can tell. They've actually recreated mice with the same genes that woolly mammoths had with like the fur.
Oh my gosh.
So they actually have started. They are trying to bring it back.
I
But
just think it's so,
it's
like,
it's the whole ethical problem with it though. Like experimenting. Speaking of the book and experimenting with animals, like even with like animal testing, there's so many ethics to it. Like I don't agree with animal testing at all because like
no, I hate. I actually refuse. Mac still does animal testing, and they say
gosh.
like, oh, a lot of companies do this where they're like, oh, well, we don't test on animals except to sell the product in this country where it's legally required. And it's like, yeah, that means that you test on animals, babe. That's like, sorry, I'm not gonna buy your product. There are many companies that refuse to sell in the places where it's legally required, specifically because they know that it's wrong. Like, there's not, like, if you're gonna have the capitalistic agenda, don't let it get in the way of, like, the most basic kind of ethics code that you can have in cosmetics industries.
exactly.
It's just so easy not to sell in like China, or because like then people in China would be annoyed that they weren't getting these products and maybe they would change the law. It's like you can't use those things as an excuse, right? Like it's just not. And I think this is like why I liked this version, like this adaptation. I have it next to me because I've still got 50 pages left. But like I was really enjoying reading it because I feel like the characters have more of a connection than the original, because like in the original this guy is a stranger, whereas in this one they know each other, they have relationships with each other that go back for a long time, and like you see directly the effects of these experiments on the creatures. You see the actual impact on their daily lives because they were made rather than born. Like the pain that they have, the chronic pain. And, you have somebody who comes to accept that her father, who she loves, is wrong, and that he shouldn't have been doing this, and that it's wrong for him to care more about her than for the others because he has a responsibility because he made them. That is the kind of thing that I was getting at with the Jurassic Park thing, like you said, was that sometimes, like, I think that H.G. Wells' book of this, it did what the film of Jurassic Park did, where it didn't really talk about that. Yes, it acknowledged that it was wrong because the guy was like, oh, it's monstrous, look at these horrible creatures and look how dangerous they are, and, look at how hurt they get every time that he has to, like, beat them into submission and stuff. And, like, he talked about how he got, like, excommunicated, basically, from the scientific community because of his research, because that they were like, this is actually awful. But it didn't go into that so much, and I feel like the retelling did a much better job of hitting the emotional and ethical consequences rather than just like mad scientist sort of is like the sort of antagonist of the story, who would have guessed, version of it that H.G. Wells did. I think that's like actually like my complaint with his books in general. And the problem is I still want to read other of his books. Like, what did he write? Did he write The Invisible Man? Was that him?
Yes, yeah.
That's like a super famous book, so obviously I want to read that. And he wrote The War of the Worlds, which again, super famous book, like huge implications in terms of like the influence of it. So I want to read those two books. He also wrote A Modern Utopia, which is one of the books that deals with the ideas of utopias and dystopias. Like, he has these ideas that are absolutely brilliant, and he deserves objectively to be in his sort of place of science fiction royalty, especially for the time that he wrote. But I think that, like, it's really sad to me that the books, they seem to have, like, a rushed quality to them, and a sort of detachment from, like, the implications of these things, where you can say, yes, they're bad, or yes, society gets worse, as is the case in the Time Machine. There's evolution in that and stuff. But, like, it feels very much like he was better at coming up with the ideas than he was at developing them and turning them into long stories that had, like, a lot of philosophical thought of the sort of meaning of what he was writing, and that's fine. But it doesn't fit with what I want as a reader and as a writer, and I think that she kind of nailed that on a few different, like, she managed to fit a few different questions into this adaptation. Like, she had, like, the issues of race and colonialism, which is very prevalent in her work, and that I always like because I think it's really interesting, and she always manages to talk about slightly different areas, which is fun, and, like, slightly different issues with it. And I thought it was really interesting to read about the fact that, like, my dad just sent me a Happy New Year text at 5:30.
Oh, I had one from my auntie at like 1:00. I'm like, it's not Happy New Year.
But,
yeah.
Like, sorry. But basically, what I'm trying to say is that this book, which kind of matches my outfit, is, in my opinion, it's better than the original. Not because, obviously, it wouldn't exist without the original, I accept that. But I think that the emotional weight was a lot heavier. And so I did care about these hybrids, but I also understood from, you know, reading the other book that, like, objectively they are dangerous because, you know, without, like, the Doctor continuously, like, talking to them and convincing them that he's, like, the word of God, which we saw in the original, like, what's his name? He's got, like, what is his name? Oh my god. The guy.
Montgomery.
Prendick. He is the guy who, like, when the Doctor is killed in the original story, is, like, he's not dead, he is just up there and you can't see him, basically turning him fully into God. And, like, I thought that was really interesting, but I think it's even more interesting to read the idea that, like, the Doctor has been kind of doing that to himself in, like, church services that he makes these creatures go to, and that they do doubt it, and seeing the reasons behind that and seeing, like, everything sort of slowly happen, I just felt like it had more to offer. Which is a shame, because I hate being like, oh, well, the retelling was better, but it kind of just was.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe it's just because it's more of, like, a modern take on the book. Like, I especially like what they did with Montgomery's character. Like, he's kind of, like, one-sided in the original book. And he is. And, you know, and here, I'd say it's more like he's quite well-rounded here. He does something. Yeah, I think he only cares about Carlotta, really. He doesn't care about his employer, really, does he?
Rightfully so.
He only cares. I mean, in both books, he doesn't really care, does he?
No. He cares about the people, which is true in both.
Yeah, and he actually cares about the hybrids, and it's like, I like his take. He's been well fleshed out. I will say that, like, yeah, Dr. Moreau, I think Dr. Moreau is quite a complicated character in itself. Like, yeah, he believes that all of these characters, you know...
Yeah.
Not characters, all these hybrids are just, like, him bettering the human race. But you can tell he kind of does he does care about his daughter in a weird, twisted way.
He's one of those, like, parents.
He does, yeah. He thinks he's doing what's best for her when he isn't.
He manipulates her because she's very naive, and he definitely, like, the fact that he knows that she's, like, slept with this guy, and is, like, he's fine with it because he's like, well, I can use that to legally make this guy marry her.
Yeah.
Like, he's fine with that happening. But also, he is considering the fact that, like, he's poor, and if he's gonna die, he wants her to be taken care of, especially because she's not fully human. But also, she's too human to necessarily just live with these hybrids for the rest of her life. Like, he doesn't want that for her. I think that's kind of... It's, like, sweet in the, like, unredeemable but, like, understandable kind of way.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, he's such... In the original, he's just kind of seen as a mad scientist, and that's all you get, really. Like, one-sided, which is why I think I prefer this version as well. Especially... Like I say, he's just more well-rounded. Like, you can... What he's doing... Although it... Obviously, we both got to just clarify, we don't agree. Obviously. He's just trying to better humanity and trying to, like, get rid of the ill effects or just help people, but obviously in the wrong way of doing it the wrong way.
The thing for me is that I think that his books, like, as a writer, they're all very short. I think they're like 100 or something pages. This is like 300 pages, which isn't even that much longer, but it allows you to build off of the original story, which obviously helps. And it allows you to actually meet these people, and it shows Montgomery coming to the island. It shows that he doesn't agree with the Doctor, but that he has to be there, and that the longer he's there, the more that he likes the people and the place. And while he doesn't agree with the work, he feels like obligated to these people in a way that he doesn't feel obligated to anybody, because he's got this complicated history where the only person in his life that ever really meant anything to him was his sister, who he messed up. And it's not like his fault, right? Like, obviously he should have helped her, but also you should never feel responsible if somebody chooses to take their own life because of a situation that they're in. Like, it's not his fault. Yes, he could have done something that would have helped, but ultimately, like, he has a lot more guilt for that than he needs to, and he carries that with him, and that's why he cares so much for these people, because he sees the lives that these people could live, and the lives that are kind of being not allowed to them. Like, they're not being given a chance at having them, and so he defends them. And we see that in the original. We see him caring about these people and trusting them to the point that he gets killed by them. And I just think that it's the depth of his character, the depth of Dr. Moreau, the depth of, like, the hybrids themselves, of giving them, like, the more humanizing abilities, you know. It feels so much more well-rounded, and it has so much more empathy for everybody. And I think when you take away, like, the caricaturish idea of, like, a mad scientist, because that's what it is, right? It's like the guy who gets washed up, he's the helpless bystander who's trying to survive. Montgomery is the drunk who is just here because he's been here too long now to go away, and, you know, he gets the alcohol that he needs. He gets to party with these hybrids that he resembles more than men because of how long he's been away from society. You know, he gets, like, what he wants, and it's all very, like, flat in terms of the portrayal. And the Doctor is the mad scientist who dies as a result of his own hubris in his creation. And the creatures, they're inhuman, so they act inhumanely and they kill people. It's all very, like, flat, and I get it, especially for the time period. It would have been a bit weird if he was, like, defending the kind of practice, because I think it was published in, like, the late 1800s, right? So it would have been a little weird if he was trying to get people to sympathize, because they really liked their one-sided characters who have no depth at that time. It was all about caricatures and sort of the, you know, this person's the antagonist, this person's the protagonist, this person's the victim, or whatever. I just think that it really, like, the story came to life when those caricatures became less prominent and the people became human again, with flaws and good things. And, you know, ultimately, he did do it because he wanted to make humanity better. He wanted to figure this thing out because he believed that it did. I do think that he genuinely believed that.
Yes.
But it was one of those things that he should never have done, and that it wasn't his decision to do that. Like, but he made it anyway. And I don't know. I think that maybe we both love depth in character, which sounds like so obvious, because, like, that's, like, the thing right now is, like, oh, this character has no depth. People don't like that. But we both, like, prioritize that. Like, we have things that we do to our characters specifically to give them that. You know, we work on developing their personalities, we work on developing their relationships with people. You know, you got that really lovely comment on your book where it talks about how it's as much about, like, these people growing up and having these complicated lives and feelings and learning to sort of process them in a healthy way and finding acceptance in each other, as much as it's about them, like, loving each other, right? Like, that's the kind of stories that we write and that we prioritize, and the ones that I enjoy reading. It's why I like The Bell Jar, because, as we said in the last episode we talked about a book, I like to talk about the flaws of that book, because I think that there's a lot of depth in its flaws, and how it sort of has that hypocrisy of, like, looking at one thing but then ignoring the other thing, and how a human being is like that. A human being can have ups and downs. they can reveal something important, like research about giving humans the ability to maybe regrow limbs, for example. Every time I think about stuff like that, I think about Amazing Spider-Man. But I just think that, like, that depth is something that's present in our work, and it's present in a lot of the books that we read. And so it was nice reading a book that took a really great premise and gave it that depth that it was lacking. That's my thought on the original book. That's like it, basically. I feel like there's not actually that much to say about it, because it is just so...
I think there's just a lot. I mean, what you could talk about is, I suppose, the difference with the hybrids. Like, obviously, you know, how they're seen as animalistic, which speaking of the background, when I was looking into some research to do with the Island of Dr Moreau, I was looking at, so it was theorised that because, you know, the idea of Darwinism, well, obviously, was coming in. Obviously, it's not an idea, and it was kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Terms with it. It was like...
Yeah, he converted to Darwinism when he was still in school, against religion. So it's like, it was the idea, that's it, I was trying to say. It's the idea that Darwinism is challenging these ideological beliefs of Christians, because obviously Christianity was a big thing during the Victorian period.
Oh, evolution
and
was
all of a sudden, yeah, and then you've got the idea of evolution in. So some people were theorising that, you know, the idea of this is what it's messing with, and it's what bleeds into War of the Worlds as well. So you can see that a lot in his works.
Well, it's in, I said this to you privately, but it's in the time machine, because he goes like millions of years into the future of the Earth, and he meets like the future of the human race, and they're just like completely helpless. They're like these, the way I kind of imagined them was like almost like, is it called Pikmin? Is that what it's called? Hang on. Yeah, I imagined them like Pikmin. Like, this is how I imagined the human race walking around in that book, with just like a regular human guy next to them.
Like that. Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Because they're described like these helpless beings that kind of just don't really speak, and they kind of like run around. And I just thought that was really interesting. Because again, like, I have a book that I plan on writing where it's kind of the same sort of idea of like the future of the human race in a time that's like really far on from ours, right? And mine's going to be more speculative than his was. His was kind of like, it had that very like, if you sort of read The Island of Dr Moreau, you would understand the vibe of that book too, because I think that's just his vibe in general, which is cool, whatever. But I do think it's interesting. Evolution, like, imagine we just talk about evolution. But like, because you read into it, you like read like a whole article, you like sent me that about, what's it called?
Can't be there.
Hang on. Okay, whatever. Anyway, but like, I feel like the evolution idea, it is really interesting to see different levels of humanity.
And they're treated more like you grew up with them, but the scene is just like, I guess, people in a weird way.
People with some deformities, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's like, what is it called? It's like when you consider that we see this sort of spectrum of like the ones that he didn't get as right as the ones that he did get as right. And it's like a whole thing is that he sees them as projects. I think it's interesting to also consider that, like, both in the original and in this version, the idea of, like, humanity and of, like, this person being more human just because they were born human, it's kind of questioned. Like, less so in the original, but, like, the idea that, you know, he did inhumane things to create them. And they did humane things by trying to avoid fighting, by trying to just live peacefully.
Exactly.
It's like, especially when you bring it into the colonialism discourse, where they call them Indians in the book, which is, it's lore accurate. Sorry.
Lore accurate.
It's historical. But it's literally talking about, like, Mexicans.
Yeah, like...
And, like, Mayans.
Kind of, and yeah, making them seen as, like, savage.
Yeah, that's the way... I will forever talk about the word savage and how it's used. There is a book that we could never talk about on this podcast because the guy who wrote it is dead, and I have nothing nice to say about him. But he would
Just
call
off the
people
record, who is
savages. It's a book called American Sniper, and it's written by the most prolific sniper in American history. But he fought in like Iraq and Iran. And
Of course he did.
this can be on the record because I think this plays into what I'm talking about in general.
Okay.
And I think it makes my stance very clear. But he talks in that book about how these people are savages, right? These Iraqis, they're savages. And he says this because he doesn't understand, A, how people could have protested the Vietnam War. He thinks that was disgraceful. He also...
That just tells me exactly what I needed to know. You don't need to go any further.
He thinks that, like, the soldiers who got, like, booed and stuff for fighting in that war, he was like, that's a shame, they fought for their country. He believes that sort of stuff, and he believes that he's doing the right thing. And he doesn't understand how this, like, 18-year-old boy who dies in his arms could possibly have any, like, sympathy towards, you know, this young boy. How he could have any sympathy. How you could have any sympathy. How he should have to, like, feel sorry for this boy's mother, for this 18-year-old boy dying. Because this 18-year-old boy who grew up in Iraq during the time of, you know, the reason why they're there ostensibly fighting, he grew up with the propaganda. He had his home destroyed by the American soldiers, for example. He saw them fighting, he saw them in his homeland, and he fought against them, and he doesn't understand the hypocrisy of saying that it's weird that he would only choose that path. And that he should have to have sympathy for a kid who died doing something wrong. As if he isn't so up America's arse that it's, like, insane. He literally, his wife writes sections of this book. This is why I couldn't say it, because he's literally dead. But his wife is in the book, and she writes, like, sections where she's like, I said to him, you know, please stay, because I'm pregnant, we already have one child, I am overwhelmed, I get so anxious that I can barely sleep or think while you are off fighting with your life on the line. And he goes anyway on another tour, like he chooses to do that. And she says, I knew that he put his family behind his country. We would never mean as much to him.
I'm just looking at it. How the heck did he die?
He got shot by a PTSD victim, like a veteran, because eventually she was like, his wife was like, look, if you go off to fight again, that's fine, but we're not married anymore. Like, I can't do this.
I'm saying he was discharged.
So he left the army, and
okay.
He decided to open like a rehab type place where soldiers could go and shoot after leaving the army as a way of getting better, but he got shot by one of those people.
It's saying here his autobiography contains many incidents that are unverifiable or that appear been to be...
He says things that you would hope that they're not verifiable, because he talks about, like, human lives like they mean nothing just because they're who he deems to be savages. And this is, like, why I brought it up, right? Because that book made me feel so disgusted, because he didn't see that he had been fed propaganda about America and that he was no better than the people fighting for their country on their own territory. He didn't see that. He didn't see that he was no better than those people that he thought were savages. And it's exactly what, like, colonialism was about, right? Was that they thought that they were better, and they didn't understand exactly how awful it was for them to talk about how sophisticated and how elegant and, like, you know, ladylike their women were and stuff, and how, you know, poised and, you know, well-spoken or whatever. Meanwhile, they're out there being like, oh, we're gonna kill this Indian leader guy because he dares to think that it's not good that this country has been taken over by white people and people who are, like, working basically as slaves for the white people. Like, yeah, okay, obviously stuff is more complicated than that. I think any soldier in a war has questionable things that they have done, especially if they're leading. And there are going to be things that they've done that are objectively wrong. But it doesn't mean that, like, you just get a free pass to hunt them down like they're an animal. And that's what the white people wanted to do. And the animals wanted to join those people and, like, be a part of this, like, rebel group of natives. Because if those people are seen as, like, animals, as savages, so are the hybrids. And yet, we as the reader, especially from a modern perspective, colonialism is bad. Didn't know if you know that, guys. But we know that now. And so, like, we know that it's kind of a little bit more savage for you to decide to kill people and enslave them just because you feel like it. It's kind of more savage, actually. And I think that the only use, like, if somebody called a non-white person savage, I would look at them like major side-eye. Because, like, in my mind, you're racist. And I'm not.
I think because the use of words has been something that's been used against people of colour for
animals is like
animals. Yeah,
animal language, it's
not to be
used
political.
against non-white people, and it's used against women.
Yeah, it's like how the far right with migrants, and they call them that, like they'll say them aliens. Yeah, and it's like, do you realise they are people too, right?
They're people, and
you're
again,
not better than them.
How many times do we have to explain this? They came here because we colonized them. We colonized everybody, and so because we colonized everybody.
I mean, trying to explain that to a far right person, I wouldn't even bother.
They speak English, or they hear about how great our country is because we've been telling them that we are so much better than them this whole time. So yeah, they do come here. Yeah, they do. And half of them are fleeing for their lives. Half of them are coming here because they think that this is the land where, like, especially America. America is where even people from Britain would leave and go to America because they thought it was like the new world. It was going to be where they would have opportunities. Why are you now acting, when you made the American dream, why are you acting surprised that people want a piece of it? And okay, if they went there illegally, fine, I get that maybe you should deport them, but you're not deporting them. You're not sending them back where they came from. You're not doing that. You're making it harder for them to, like, legally get into the country. You're giving them, like, problems with their pre-approved, already, like, set in stone right to live there. And then you're not kicking them out of the country. You're sending them to a prison. That's not deportation. That's not removing them from taxpayers' problems. That is specifically making them not able to spend any money except for, like, other people's, because they're not earning money, because they're not even, like, prisoners. They're people in a detention facility. It just is, like, insane to me that we have this, like, narrative, and this author is brilliant for it, right? And I think H.G. Wells does a decent job of not being overly racist in the books that I've read.
Exactly.
But I think that it's really interesting when you combine all of these ideas because they are intertwined. Black people especially, but everyone who isn't white, they've gotten called, like, I think it's Chinese people who get compared to rodents. I've never really understood that. I've never understood racism in general, but, like, I've never understood that. I've never understood the use of, like, calling women things like dogs or cows, or especially because it's like the thing of, like, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? Like, I don't know, maybe because she's a person that you value, you know? And not a cow. Maybe that's why. Like, and it's just, it's that thing of, like, when you take that sort of narrative and you put it into this idea of a society where there are literal animals that have been made more human, and they're not quite human, but they're also not really animals, it becomes really interesting because you feel like the line between animal and human gets blended, but not just from animal to human, from human to animal. That's, like, the point that I was making. That's my really long-winded way of explaining, basically. But I think that that is what stood out to me, is that there's just more discussions to be had about this, like, rewritten version, clearly, because that's what we've been talking about.
Because, yeah, like I said, there's just not a lot in the original.
Yeah. I think it's such a... This is my problem with H.G. Wells. He has brilliant books. Like, I swear to God, these ideas are great. Love him for that. But they're so dull because they just don't talk about, like... You know, they focus on, like, the action that happens. And I'm like, that's great. I love that there's action happening. But also, this is, like, a really cool idea. Do you think maybe we could just linger for a minute? Instead of, like, a character nearly, like... He tries to, like, kill himself by walking into the ocean.
Oh, yeah, that was okay.
He's like, I'm gonna get eaten by sharks because you're gonna hurt me and I don't want you to do that. And they're like, mate, can you calm down? Can you stop? Like, please. It just... It makes me laugh. How it's just like, it's so dramatic, but also it doesn't linger on those dramatic moments. I don't know. I thought they were both good, but I did prefer the second, the newer. But yeah, did you have any thoughts besides?
Do you know? Now you're asking me. I don't.
So me, like, I feel it. I think it's one of those things where. Should we talk about the romance very briefly?
Oh yeah, it wasn't really a romance, was it? It was more like a weird side plot. Oh, also, how old was Carlotta supposed to be?
I think she was 21.
She's not. She's not.
No, she was. She was like...
No, it says you're barely even 21. I thought she was about 15.
She was to begin with. And then it skips like 7 years.
She's not 21. Because in the epilogue, this isn't spoilers, but in the epilogue they say, oh, you're not even 21 yet.
Let's say that she was 14. So she might have been like 20.
Okay, that makes... I was just about to say, because, you know...
It was 7 years-ish. Wait, hang on.
Yeah, because you know the fun times they have.
Yeah.
Because I thought she was 14.
Yeah, she definitely wasn't. Hang on. It's 6
she's
years.
20.
So,
okay.
She was 15 then. And she then was like, yeah.
20. Okay, that's fine by me. I was worried.
She was like a kid.
I generally thought she was a kid, but I'm like, no, she wouldn't have wrote this otherwise, but then, yeah.
No, I will say, my one, I read the physical copy. The parts have the dates on them.
Yeah, I did buy the Kindle version, and it does have the things on.
Well, so. I think that I thought it was really interesting actually. We'll call it a romance with the white guy, the rich white guy, not the other one. I thought it was really interesting that like she kind of had feelings for him, but also she was very clearly like using not like, I don't want to say manipulation, because she was a woman doing what she needed to do. But the way that she thought about that relationship, it was very like, you know, if I sleep with him, he will give me what I want. And so she kind of, like, she was being used objectively, but also she was trying to reclaim, you know, she was fighting for her home. That was the only reason she really was marrying him, because yeah, she was kind of interested in him. But she really seemed to care more about, like, home. I don't think she would have married anyone if that wasn't on the table, right? Like, she wouldn't have tried to.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, she used the things that she was, like, going to have held against her as a weapon. And I think that's really, like, fun, because I don't know, I think it, like, showed a bit of her personality. It showed that maybe she wasn't as naive as other people thought that she was. And that, yes, she was still being taken advantage of, but that she knew it, and she was using that to get what she wanted out of it, at the very least. Like, right till the very end, she was like, maybe I can just, you know, like, maybe. And I think that's, I don't know, I appreciated that, because I think that, when she was, like, you know, introduced, I was a little bit worried about why specifically there was a daughter, rather than just a retelling of the original story. And I think that her character made a huge impact in the things that she needed to. Especially, like, because of her being a hybrid, the conversation around her rights and, like, her power and her autonomy were just really interesting. And I think they added a lot to the conversation, specifically. I don't know. It was... yeah. I guess it wasn't really a romance, though.
No, it was just more of I would call it a necessity.
Yeah, I was like cringing when I was like, oh.
Well, Jane, you're in love with the idea of love, and I was like, yeah, she is. That's true. She doesn't really know what it is.
She barely knows this guy, and she's like willing to do something that she objectively knows is not what you do until you're married. And look, I'm saying this, obviously, I don't believe that. There are some people who believe that, but I don't. I don't think that should ever be the case. In fact, there's been, like, evidence more recently, and I think that this is very interesting, right? Because this is especially from a woman's perspective. You're told now that, like, your marriage actually has a better chance of surviving if you have slept together before you get married, because you know whether you're compatible or not. And so you don't go into it and then realize, oh, I'm either going to have to get divorced, or I'm going to have to be, like, completely unsatisfied with my marriage for the rest of my life. And I think it's interesting that, like, she doesn't really consider that, and it mentions that she's got those very animalistic senses of the feeling, and that she doesn't really see that as an issue for herself, and if anything, she's willing to kind of use it against, you know, the guy who's, like, trying to separate them.
Oh yeah, wait till you finish the last 50 pages.
Oh,
I won't say anything.
I'm gonna read them like basically in like a minute.
I won't say anything, obviously, but yeah, wait till you finish it off.
I was so annoyed that I had to stop, but I was like, I really do. I have to stop. Like, I don't have the time to keep going. Because I had stuff to do. I was like in bed with my cat reading, and I was like, I have to get up. Anyways, I have to say to my cat as well, I have to be like, I have to get up now, sweetie. And she's just like, well. And she like
Don't want
walks
to
away.
move. Meanwhile, I was just like, I can finish this in a couple of hours.
Yeah. I think if I'd even given myself an extra hour, but I spent like an hour in bed just shivering because I was like, I'm so cold. If I'd just like not done that, it would have been fine. But I didn't. So anyway, any closing remarks?
No, I'll just say I think I just preferred the modern version, I guess you call it. But I do you know, I was going to say, it really reminded me, you know, like Carol Ann Duffy's like poetry and about like comparing like wild beasts to women. That's what it reminded me of a little bit. The Jaguar.
I love that. I think it's like one of those vibes that she does very well in general. Giving women that like, not necessarily like a societal, they don't follow what is expected of them. And they do it in times in a way that's almost like vicious, like baring of teeth, you know, using their nails as claws. And in this case, that's very literal. But I think that she's very good at doing like that vibe in general of like women fighting for themselves and for others of their kind. And I love it. And I love like, that is a really apt comparison. Especially, I think that like, in general, sort of like modern women's poetry. Perfect vibe.
I definitely want to check out more novels by her. I'm just looking and there's quite a few she's wrote, so I think we should do another. I quite like the look of Gods of Jade and Shadow. That looks interesting.
I own actually.
Oh, historical fantasy novel. Oh yeah, that looks fun. That looks like my sort of thing.
Yeah. She has one that's also it's called The Beautiful Ones. I don't know what it's about, but I bought it immediately when I saw it because I was like, that cover is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I definitely want to read more stuff by her because I do like her writing style.
And it's so easy. Like, it's not like you read it and all of these complicated ideas feel... I feel like sometimes authors, they have so much to say that their writing becomes very dull. But, like, she manages to write so many different genres and characters, but to have, like, similar themes that are explored in different ways, and I just love it.
Yeah.
I don't know. We should totally... Did we do Mexican Gothic in the first season? Have we done like one every season so far?
Yeah, we should do one every season.
We would get through them because she wrote a new one recently.
Yeah, I've just seen it. It came out this year because it's the 31st of December today.
Yeah, and I didn't buy it. It's the first one of hers I've not bought actually.
Oh, wow.
Because I was like, I'm being good, but maybe I will.
Wow.
But like, yeah, I think that she has a really enjoyable way of writing about these topics, and especially like if you're out there and you're listening and you're not sure, because I feel like we maybe make them sound a bit more intimidating because they do go into these heavy discussions, but they do them in a very pliable way. And so it's more about your interpretation, but you're set up to think about the questions that she clearly wants you to think about. And I like that. I like that you're given the suggestion of what to think, but you get to think about it yourself. That might sound really dumb, but basically they're a lot easier to read than I make it sound sometimes. You don't need to know like a bunch of the stuff, like the histories of the places. You don't need to understand everything, but I think they're a really good place actually to learn about the basics of colonialism and of like scientific responsibility in this case.
Yep.
And I would fully recommend honestly reading both of the books, but especially I feel like you can get away with reading just The Daughter. It's hard to say because
I think I suppose there's still a bit of background knowledge, but you know, I think it's fine to read it as
it's not
on
like
its own.
it's prequel to the events necessarily.
Yeah,
I don't know, but yeah, anyway, I did enjoy the books. I haven't rated this one yet because I've not finished it, but
I would say 4 stars. It's it's very rare I have a 5-star, but I enjoyed it for what it is.
Which is, for me, I've spoken about this before, it's basically a 4. It's just like, I'm stingy. Again, you've had like 1 5-star this year, or like 2 5-stars.
Oh yeah, that was One Piece.
And it's like I'm stingy.
But that's because, okay, like the writing was absolutely amazing, okay, and it's very rare. it's very rare something like that really impresses me. So yeah.
Yeah. And next week, before we go, I need to remember to say this. We are going to write. No, sorry. We're going to speak about kind of like a review of the year. It's going to be kind of almost like not necessarily a Christmas party, but like a Christmas party. Like, you go to have a chat.
Even though it's going up on the 10th of January.
Oh yeah, that's true. We'll call it a New Year's party and we'll pretend.
Yeah.
But it'll be like very chatty as usual, but we'll talk about the podcast, the things that we've really enjoyed about it, the episodes that stand out to us so far. Because we only started it this year, so both of the seasons that have happened, they've been this year. So we'll talk about those. We'll talk about our plans for the future and whatnot, and basically just, connect that to our writing, because we both have some interesting things that we're working on. There's one big thing in particular.
Yeah, I need to get that sorted.
So we'll have a lot to say, I think, about where we want to be by the end of the next year, and it's basically going to be just like the Spotify Wrapped, but for the podcast, which we actually did get because we post on Spotify. It was really interesting. There are like 7 different countries worth of viewers, by the way. Oh, and hello to all of the new people who subscribed, by the way. We doubled our subscriber count in the space of a week. It was crazy.
Oh yeah. When you were saying.
So hello to all of you, and Happy New Year, because it's definitely going to be the new year. It's like the 3rd of January or something.
Yes. So Happy New Year. I can't believe we're going to be in 2026. That's insane. Oh,
it's such a round number. It's such unreal. Hopefully in 2026 we'll be even better.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Who knows?
But yeah,
who knows?
Thank you, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Bookish Rambles podcast. If you want to hear more from us,
follow to get the next episode delivered straight onto your feed.